Hi, it's Katrina. The mystery of our past continues to stump scientists at every turn. Who was really first on our planet? What was the civilization that started it all? Get ready for a journey you won't forget. Who was first? One of the biggest mysteries in the world is, where did we come from? Who was the first to make humans what we are? When you go back in history and follow the archaeological evidence, the earliest civilizations go back to Mesopotamia. But how did they start? What made humans go from wandering nomads to building entire cities and creating math and writing and agriculture, trying to dominate nature and bend it to our will? What happened before that? One story is that way back, hundreds of thousands of years ago or more, long before any pyramids or empires you've ever heard of, in the inky blackness of space, there was a planet called Nibiru. Not your average rock, this thing had an orbit that stretched out for millennia, and on it lived an advanced race of beings called the Anunnaki. Now, these weren't your friendly neighborhood aliens. Legend has it they were facing a problem back home. Their atmosphere was getting destroyed, and the only fix? Gold. Lots and lots of it. So they set their sights on our beautiful Earth that was full of gold. They landed, set up shop, and started digging. But these guys were advanced, not exactly keen on backbreaking labor. Enter Enki and Ninmah, the Anunnaki's leaders. They looked around at the local wildlife, our early human ancestors, and had an idea, a rather unsettling one. They allegedly started tinkering with DNA, mixing their own advanced genetic code with that of these primitive hominids. The result? Us, modern humans, supposedly engineered as a workforce to mine that precious gold. Think of it. Our very existence, according to this story, is tied to the atmospheric woes of an alien race. They even ruled over us for a while, these Anunnaki kings, before eventually packing up and leaving us to inherit a world shaped by their bizarre intervention. It's a wild story, one that makes you look at our history in a whole new and slightly unsettling light. The Preatommite Race. If we look at the world from a religious, biblical sense, Adam was the first man. And there are many civilizations who believe there was one person whom the gods created in their image who started it all. But there is another theory of the Preatommite race. Basically, it's this belief that there were intelligent beings here on Earth way before Adam even showed up. Now, the interesting thing is, this isn't necessarily saying that these creatures looked like us, but more that they were highly intelligent, just like us. They had their own civilization and lived on Earth, but Adam was the first official human, the start of our specific lineage. Adam was different from all the other cast of characters that lived on Earth. This might sound like a wild idea, but this theory has been around for at least 2,000 years. Can you believe it? The first time it popped up in recorded history was way back in 170 AD, when an Egyptian pagan named Apollonius had a debate about it with a Christian named Theophilus of Antioch. And it wasn't just a one-off chat. This theory actually gained some serious steam and spread throughout the Roman Empire. It even got so popular that Emperor Julian the Apostate ditched Christianity and went back to paganism. He believed that many pairs of original people had been created and coined the term multiple atomism. Fast forward a few centuries to the early days of Islam, around the year 900, there was this pretty common belief that humans weren't the first intelligent inhabitants of Earth. Nope. They thought there was a previous group called the Jinn, who were the pre-Adamites, and they supposedly ruled the planet for at least 50,000 years. These kinds of ideas were actually pretty widespread, even if they weren't exactly the most popular opinion. But things got intense around the 10th century, when these views started being labeled as heresy, and that came with some seriously nasty consequences. Later on, Italian philosopher Giordano Bruno, back in 1591, added to the theory. He looked at the different races of people and thought, there's no way Jewish people and Ethiopian people all came from the same original person. He was convinced God created multiple Adams to start the various races we see around the world, with some folks descending from these earlier pre-Adamite groups. So when you look at it this way, you could technically say Adam was the first man, the first of our kind, the modern human race. But at the same time, the theory suggests he wasn't the only man or the first intelligent being to walk the earth. Pretty interesting theory, right? What are your thoughts on this? And now for a quick break because it's shout out time. I want to give a big thank you to Wayne McMaster for this super thanks. It really means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. When dinosaurs ruled the world. Did dinosaurs have a whole civilization? It might sound like a silly question, but apparently, technologically advanced dinosaurs might have tried asteroid mining and accidentally crashed a big one into the Earth, driving themselves extinct in the process. Author and scientist Peter Brannan came up with a thought experiment. He asked, what if the dinosaurs didn't just rule the Earth with teeth and claws, but also with calculators and rocket fuel? In other words, dinosaurs with technology. 66 million years ago, a T-Rex in a lab coat might have been yelling, warning his friends while a 6-mile-wide asteroid screamed towards Earth like a cosmic Amazon Prime package that the driver chucks at your front door from the back of their truck. It sounds crazy, but it might be true. Brannan isn't claiming there was a Jurassic Silicon Valley or that velociraptors made nukes. It's more about time, geological time to be specific, and how ridiculously short humanity's run has been in the grand scheme of things. The point is that according to Brannan, if some raptor-shaped Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos launched a dino space program and miscalculated an asteroid's orbit, ending their species, there would be no evidence of it left today. There could have been super smart lizard kings in the middle of their own space age, and there wouldn't be a drop of physical proof left. Why? Because the Earth is savage when it comes to cleaning up evidence. Faster than a wave erasing a sandcastle, Earth can go full factory reset in a blip, like that. Even if this mysterious dino civilization ended in nuclear war, there would likely be no trace. The longest-lasting radioactive isotope from nukes sticks around for about 16 million years. There could have been 24 nuclear apocalypses, and the Earth would have swallowed them whole. Meaning that even if the Triassic Times had a Manhattan Project, we would be none the wiser. Brannan's not just playing science fiction roulette, he is making a point about humanity. We have changed the planet a lot in just a few thousand years. Plastic, pollution, concrete jungles, fossil fuels everywhere. Yet in geological time, our dominion has been but a blink. Future archaeologists or future AI robots might not even know we were here. Just like we wouldn't know about our scaly predecessor's hypothetical moon base. If humanity went extinct right now, a legion of hyper-intelligent tardigrades grown to human size could develop their own civilization and never find a single piece of our human culture, not even the dust from an atomic bomb test. Point being, dinosaurs may have ruled the world long before God molded Adam from clay and broke off a rib to make him a wife. Not only dinosaurs, but other different species too. The Earth has been around for so long, there could have been entire civilizations that rose and fell every few million years and no one would ever know. Ancient ruins on Mars. I'm just going to rip the band-aid off and jump right in. What if Mars had cities? Not the shiny hotel pods we've been promised. I'm talking about ancient, sand-covered, possibly abandoned structures built by a civilization that predates humans by millions of years. There is a growing pile of images from Mars that show strange geometric shapes, and people are getting very excited. Are they ruins? Are they natural? I discussed this in another video when our UFO hunting friend Scott Waring shared some more things that he's found from satellite images. But this time, it's different. This time, even mainstream scientists are on board. Carl Sagan once said, "The first indication of intelligent life on Earth lies in the geometric regularity of its constructions." He was talking about clean lines, right angles, and symmetry. These are signatures of intention, not something nature tosses together randomly. Now, let's look at Mars. For years, satellites and rovers have sent back images of oddly shaped ridges, rectangular patterns, and intersecting lines buried in Martian dust. One of the most famous examples is NASA's so-called Inca City. It's a group of intersecting ridges in the South Polar layered terrain that looks so architectural they were given that nickname after being spotted by Mariner 9 in 1972. Yeah, 1972! I bet you thought I was going to be dropping some new photos, but nope. The Inca city on Mars has been acknowledged by scientists for more than 50 years. The Mars Global Surveyor later captured high-resolution images of the same area, showing what many see as the remnants of a once complex design. The clearer pictures didn't debunk squat. If anything, they showed the city in better detail. Then there are the curious formations in places like Augigus Rupes and Arabia Terra. In these regions of Mars, multiple square-like patterns and structures seem to suggest deliberate design. NASA typically labels them as natural mesas, but critics argue that at a certain scale, repeated geometric shapes stop looking like a coincidence. Before writing any of this off as total nonsense, it's worth remembering that Mars wasn't always the dry, frozen dust ball it is now. A few billion years ago, it had rivers, lakes, even oceans. Its atmosphere was thicker. It was, in many ways, eerily Earth-like. Recent studies have backed this up. One led by the Planetary Science Institute in Tucson, Arizona, found that shallow lakes on Mars could have hosted life. These basins, covered in lava and filled with water over hundreds of millions of years, may have created the perfect mix of temperature, pressure, and nutrients to support microbes. And it's not just water. NASA's Curiosity rover detected methane in unexplained spikes. That's interesting because on Earth, 90% of atmospheric methane comes from living organisms. The rover also found biologically useful nitrogen, the kind you need for things like DNA and RNA. Here comes the bombshell. Dr. John Brandenburg is a plasma physicist who has gone on record with one of the more extreme hypotheses. John has said that Mars once had not just life, but civilizations. According to Brandenburg, evidence of uranium and thorium on Mars suggests two ancient nuclear explosions. He claims these weren't natural disasters, they were acts of war. His theory is that civilizations were wiped out in a planetary-scale genocide by an unknown alien force. It's a bold claim. But Brandenburg argues that the elemental traces we see on Mars and the lack of biological life now support the idea that something catastrophic and possibly nuclear happened. Could the survivors of this nuclear apocalypse have fled Mars and settled on Earth? If this is the origin of humanity, there are going to be a lot of very frustrated creationists. Our missing ancestors. For all our brain power, space travel, and high-speed Wi-Fi, the story of where humans actually come from is still a huge question mark. A question mark we're going to try to figure out together. A new review in the journal Science just made the headlines. Despite decades of fossil hunting and DNA analysis, scientists still don't agree on who or what our last common ancestor with apes was. To be honest, it's a bit of a mess. Which is exactly what Sergio Almecija, the review's lead author and senior researcher at the American Museum of Natural History, said. The exact quote is, "When you look at the narrative for hominin origins, it's just a big mess. There's no consensus whatsoever." An easier way of saying that is to just raise your palms and shrug. No one knows how humans got here. So let's put aside dino civilizations and Martians to focus on the current scientific understanding of evolution. Humans are thought to have split from the chimpanzee lineage between 9.3 and 6.5 million years ago. Today, our closest relatives are chimpanzees and bonobos. We share about 99% of our DNA with our fuzzy monkey friends. But somehow, we became the species that builds skyscrapers, argues on social media, and lands robots on Mars. Somewhere in the last 10 million years is the missing link, a creature that can connect us to these primitive monkeys. Some scientists believe the missing link was a chimp-like knuckle-walking ancestor. Others think it was something closer to the Miocene apes, a now extinct group of hooting apes that were weirder and more diverse than anything swinging in the trees today. Sergio's new study argues that modern scientists are missing something big. Sergio said the missing link might have had its own unique traits and isn't well represented in the fossil record. There could be some sort of freaky, half-human, half-chimp thing buried somewhere that no one has ever found. Our real ancestors may have walked, climbed, or moved in ways scientists haven't even imagined yet. Without the fossil of the missing link, humanity's origin remains a great big question mark. Alien abductions in the Bible? If modern-day alien abduction stories sound too bizarre to you, why not crack open the Bible? From prophets vanishing in whirlwinds to glowing beings riding chariots of fire, The world's most influential religious text is packed with skybound disappearances that to some readers look suspiciously like ancient alien encounters. And while mainstream theology may chalk these stories up to metaphor or mysticism, others ask a different question. What if the Bible contains some of the earliest recorded UFO abductions? I'll start with Elijah, a major prophet and a one-way passenger on an interstellar lift. According to 2 Kings, Elijah was taken up by a whirlwind in front of 50 witnesses. His companion Elisha even picked up his cloak, which dropped down from above. Was this some hardcore biblical magic, a tornado, or the ancient version of someone being beamed up? Enoch, another figure shrouded in mystery, is said to have never died. Genesis simply notes, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. That's a bit vague, don't you think? Luckily, the apocryphal book of Enoch fills in the blanks, describing celestial beings with glowing faces and towering forms who escort Enoch to a glass palace, where he learns divine secrets. That sounds a lot like being taken to an alien ship and shown some weird space Netflix. Then there's the prophet Isaiah, who's dressed by angels and taken up in what is described as a radiant chariot. Sounds oddly familiar if you have read any 20th century alien encounter reports. Jesus himself seems to reference these otherworldly transports. In the apocryphal story of Joseph, Jesus asks, "And what prevents me now that I pray so that my Father sends a great luminous chariot that lifts Joseph up and takes him to the place of rest?" In the New Testament, Philip the Evangelist is described in Acts 8 as being snatched away after baptizing an Ethiopian official. Then, just as suddenly, he reappeared in another city. The event is framed as a divine intervention, but again, modern readers can't help but see the sci-fi parallels. Luminous clouds, glowing beings, teleportation, it's all there, just in 1st century language. If there's one biblical figure that UFO theorists won't shut up about, it's Ezekiel. Ezekiel described a whirlwind from the north, a great cloud with flashing fire and brilliant light, something like glowing metal in the center. This floating object in the sky had structure, movement, and what sounded like creatures operating it. Ezekiel even mentioned wheels within wheels, intersecting rings, and glass-like surfaces that shimmered with light. If that's not an ancient person trying to find the words to describe an alien spaceship, then I don't know what is. Ezekiel is also one of the only people in the Bible who returns from his encounter, which has led many to wonder whether Ezekiel was the first abductee to make it back. Back from where? Don't even ask, because I have no clue. Maybe these aliens know something about our origins. Maybe they were the ones who put us here. All I can say is that when you read between the lines of the Bible, it's hard to dispute that half the dang book is about E.T., the alien ship at the bottom of the sea. Over a decade ago, a pair of treasure hunters scanning the cold, murky waters of the Baltic Sea stumbled across something that may still rewrite what we think we know about our planet, or at least what's been visiting it. The find is a 70-foot wide, perfectly shaped anomaly, sitting 300 feet below the surface. It's round, strange, unnaturally structured, and eerily similar in shape to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. What they found has since been dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, and it's one of the most persistent mysteries in modern UFO lore. Some say it's just a natural rock formation, a leftover from the Ice Age, but others, including the team who discovered it, believe it to be a piece of advanced, possibly extraterrestrial technology that crashed into our planet 140,000 years ago. How insane would it be to find out that our origin can be traced to a galactic car crash? What if this thing was driven by humans from across the universe? They could have gotten stranded on Earth and became the original Adam and Eve. That wasn't on my Human Origins bingo card, but hey, if the shoe fits. The find was made in June 2011. Swedish divers Peter Lindberg and Dennis Osberg of the Ocean X team were searching for a shipwreck in the northern Baltic Sea when their sonar picked up something impossible to ignore. In an interview, Osberg said, "We were really surprised and puzzled." And yeah, I bet that's an understatement. The team was so worried about what they had found that they kept it quiet for a long time. They didn't want to cause global panic. Then came the follow-up dives. Samples, the rumors, and the growing list of weird details, like the staircase formations that seem carved into the structure as if they lead to the main doors, or the second object only a few feet away that also seems artificial. Maybe a second craft or a fragment of the main ship? According to diver Stefan Hogerborn, his team's equipment mysteriously shut down when positioned directly above the anomaly. Anything electric, like the sonar, cameras, even the satellite phone, just stopped working. When they moved a few hundred feet away, everything started functioning again. In other words, this anomaly seems to emit something, some kind of electromagnetic field, and that is not the kind of behavior you expect from a bunch of old glacial rocks. Theories have been rolling since 2011. Some believe it's the remains of an ancient alien vessel. Others suggest it could be a remnant of a secret World War II anti-submarine device, although it must have been a big secret because no records or designs match what's been found. More extreme theories claim the anomaly could be part of a long-lost underwater city, an alien beacon, or a forgotten artifact from a pre-human civilization that predates history. The real mystery might not be what the anomaly is, but why no one seems eager to properly investigate it. Follow-up expeditions have been limited, analysis is inconclusive, and questions remain unanswered. What could they be hiding? Let me know any thoughts or theories you have in the comments, and hope you're having fun! The Pyramid Portal. In the relentless sun of Giza's desert, just beyond the timeless gaze of the Great Pyramids, something unnatural stirs beneath the sand. First off, archaeologists weren't looking for a portal. They were doing what archaeologists do, scanning the desert with cutting-edge technology, hoping to spot long-lost tombs or the dusty remnants of high-ranking royal mummies. But what they found instead was a sharp, geometrically precise, L-shaped structure buried 6 feet under the pyramids. And beneath that, something far stranger, a deep anomaly. Possibly a portal built by a forgotten civilization that predates the pyramids. Discovered using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, this unexplained underground feature has scientists intrigued, cautious, and just a little uneasy. According to a recent study led by Motoyuki Sato of Tohoku University and published in Archaeological Prospection, the L-shaped formation sits within the Western Cemetery of Giza. That's an area known for royal tombs, but it hasn't been fully excavated. Below this structure lies a space 16 to 33 feet deeper that behaves strangely under scanning. It's highly resistive to electricity, indicating air pockets or hollow spaces. In other words, it's not natural, not accidental, and cannot be explained by sand and stone alone. Here's the part that raises eyebrows. The team believes the upper L-shaped structure could be an entrance, a deliberate portal carved millennia ago. But leading to where? That's the fun part. Scientists don't know, and they aren't even prepared to start guessing. However, they did say that the passage probably connects to a massive subsurface structure, one unlike any mapped before in the area. This isn't just a blip on the radar, this is a cold, calculated void, one that was engineered, hidden, and never meant to be stumbled upon in the age of satellites and signal pulses. You might be thinking to yourself that this is a big exaggeration. A void under the pyramids is just another tomb, right? Egypt is full of them. Sure, but keep in mind Egyptologists are no strangers to buried tombs, secret shafts, and chambers packed with the glittering remnants of a powerful past. But what makes this anomaly different is its location. It's not exactly under the pyramids, it's next to them, in an untouched desert ignored for centuries due to its lack of surface monuments. Under the blank canvas of the desert is a carefully concealed void, hiding beneath a structure that itself was intentionally backfilled, as if someone wanted it to be forgotten. There are whispers that this may not be a tomb, but something else entirely. A hidden chamber, a passage to an unknown dimension, a gateway. If it is a portal to somewhere, we need only look to Egyptian myth to make sense of it. Just imagine, a passage to an unknown dimension. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, the afterlife wasn't just a poetic concept, it was a vast, complex realm. And the pyramids, massive as they are, were just the surface architecture. The real mysteries were always meant to lie beneath. Ancient texts speak of portals, underworld journeys, and cosmic paths meant for pharaohs and gods alone. So when you hear about a strange, electrically resistant anomaly beneath the sands, directly connected to a known elite burial ground, it makes you wonder, was this designed for more than burial? Was it built to travel between realms? For now, the mystery remains locked beneath the desert floor. Ground-penetrating radar can only take us so far. The real answers, whatever they may be, lie in the untouched, still sealed void. Excavation plans are in motion, but digging near the Great Pyramids is no small affair. Permits, politics, and preservation concerns all slow the process. But sooner or later, someone's going to open that door. And you can bet when they do, you'll hear about it here. The alien gods of the Hopi. Long before the internet speculated about Hollow Earth and ancient aliens, the Hopi people of North America were telling stories that would blow the doors off any modern myth. The Hopi are among the oldest surviving cultures on Earth. Their traditions reach back thousands of years, passed down orally through generations. And unlike many ancient cultures whose gods came from the sky, the Hopi speak of powerful beings who emerged from within the earth. These gods didn't descend from the stars like the Anunnaki. They rose from the deep like Cthulhu. According to Hopi legend, the earth itself is alive and very much hollow. At its center live the ant people, or Anu Sinom. These are humanoid, intelligent beings with antenna-like features, often depicted in Hopi petroglyphs in Arizona. The Hopi also speak of 4 worlds, each one destroyed due to human corruption. The Hopi believe themselves to be living now in the 4th world, and we are too, today. The previous ones were erased by fire, ice, and flood. And each time the world was destroyed, it was the ant people who saved the faithful. They guided them into vast underground cities while the surface of Earth burned, froze, or drowned. Legend says the ant people provided food, taught preservation techniques, and helped humanity begin again. This was, or is, a recurring cycle of destruction. The Hopi believed humanity had been wiped out, restarted, and wiped out again multiple times. The last big disaster was a flood. Where else have you heard about a flood resetting humanity? Many places, including the Bible and the Epic of Gilgamesh, and almost every single mythology in the world. The Hopi's vision of the earth as a sort of womb with inner worlds and portals matches perfectly with ancient Buddhist tales of the subterranean city of Agartha and Native American myths of underground refuges, like the Lizard City under LA. But that's a story for next time. In the world before the flood that ushered in our modern timeline, the Hopi spoke of a highly advanced human civilization. They said the planet was dominated by a global society that invented vehicles called patuvotas, or flying shields. According to Frank Waters, author of Mystic Mexico, these shields could travel vast distances, soar through the sky, and unleash destruction. Sound familiar? Yeah, I think they sound like UFOs too. The Hopi said these advanced people abused their technology, which led to a global flood sent by Sotuknang, the nephew of the creator god. The story sounds like how the Nephilim ruined the world, so God flooded it. The story is even similar to how Atlantis was sunk by the gods for their hubris. Could the Hopi have known about the civilization that lived before the flood? Heck, could all the ancient cultures of the world have known they were the lucky survivors of an apocalypse? John Glenn's Fireflies. If you don't believe in aliens, you're about to. Prepare to have your world flipped upside down. On February 20th, 1962, as astronaut John Glenn zipped around Earth at 17,000 miles per hour inside his cramped Friendship 7 capsule, he saw something no one had ever seen before. A strange, shimmering cloud of glowing particles surrounded his spacecraft. They were tiny, twinkling, and alive with motion. Glenn called them Fireflies. Here's an exact excerpt from the radio communications that day between John and Mission Control. "They look like little stars," said John. "A whole shower of them. They swirl around the capsule and then depart." Back on the ground, NASA engineers froze. No one had expected this. Were these particles part of the capsule disintegrating? Was Glenn's heat shield failing? If so, the first American to orbit the Earth might become the first to die in space. The glowing flakes looked almost alive. The way they danced, drifted, and floated outside the capsule made it feel like something out of science fiction. But Glenn kept his cool, carefully observing and reporting. He noted their spacing, how slowly they moved relative to the capsule, and that they weren't impacting the craft. They were just drifting along like glowing plankton in the black sea of space. Here's another thing John said to Mission Control. He said they swirl around the capsule and go in front of the window, and they're all brilliantly lighted. They probably average maybe 7 to 8 feet apart, but I can see them all down below me also. What in the world were these things? It wasn't just dust or debris. It was like tiny living fairies had surrounded Glenn's vessel. He orbited the Earth 3 times, came home safely, and never forgot what he experienced. They weren't aliens, nor were the Fireflies alien ships. They were too small. When astronaut Scott Carpenter made a similar flight later that year aboard Aurora 7, he claimed that what John saw was nothing but flakes of frozen condensation, which could be shed off the spaceship by tapping on the walls. NASA quickly offered this explanation, seemingly closing the book on the mystery. I'm bringing it up here because you can't help but wonder if there was more to the sparkling space fairies than just boring flakes of condensation. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Aliens in Africa. It was a hot, dusty day in central Tanzania, the kind of day when even the lizards were too tired to blink. In the Swaga Swaga Game Reserve, a group of archaeologists stumbled upon something that made them do a double take. They had already found 52 ancient rock shelters in the area, but one of them was different. Known as Amakhi 4, this ancient rock shelter was decorated with what can only be described as alien-like figures. On the walls were paintings of 3 spindly beings with heads so oversized they looked like they belonged on an episode of Deep Space Nine. Leading the charge into this ancient mystery is Dr. Grislick from a university in Poland. He's basically the Indiana Jones of prehistoric doodles. Grislick thinks these figures could be the missing link to understanding similar rock art spread across Tanzania. But it could be evidence of an ancient and forgotten civilization. I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it could be. It seems whoever drew these illustrations had met unusual people straight out of Coneheads. Unfortunately, nobody knows how old these paintings are. They could be hundreds of years old or thousands. Based on the style, pigment, and a distinct lack of cows, researchers think they likely date to hunter-gatherer times, aka the era before humans figured out animals could be roommates. If you want a specific date, there isn't one. Think prehistoric, so probably more than 5,000 years ago. As if things couldn't get more X-Files, similar figures popped up in Colo B1 and Colo B2, 2 other rock shelters nearby. These figures were also linked by a mysterious line drawn through them, like they're part of some ancient conga line of the cosmos.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Quap Fortress. Quap is a lost fortified city sitting atop a mountain in northern Peru. It's rivaled only by Machu Picchu in its grandeur, and yet some say it was even more impressive in its prime. This city sits 9,000 feet above sea level at the peak of a mountain. It overlooks vast valleys, rolling green hills, and cloud forests as far as the eye can see. The total area of this city is about 15 hectares. It's riddled with the ruins of civil buildings, religious temples, military structures, and so much more. Most of these structures have been reduced to crumbling stone foundations, but in its heyday, it was like a place straight out of a fairy tale. Archaeologists have uncovered over 420 circular stone dwellings, suggesting a true metropolis in the clouds. The main citadel had walls over 60 feet tall in some places, truly making it a castle in the sky. The city of Quap was the political center for the Chachapoya civilization. This was a mysterious culture that flourished around the year 900 AD. It prospered for 5 centuries and then was wiped out in the 16th century thanks to the Spanish invasion of South America. There were at least 300,000 people living in the mountain city during its peak. But after the Spanish annihilated the Chachapoya cloud warriors, the city was abandoned and left to the elements. Mount of Temptation. The Mount of Temptation is a mountain overlooking the ancient city of Jericho in Palestine. It has religious significance going back to the earliest days of Christianity. The mountain is considered a holy place. Near its peak is a Greek Orthodox monastery at almost 1,000 feet above sea level. It's called the Monastery of the Temptation, and it was built on the side of the cliff with an impressive vantage of both Jericho and the Jordan Valley. The oldest part of the structure dates back to the 6th century AD. To visit is like teleporting into a story from the New Testament. But why is the Mount of Temptation so important? Christians believe it to be the spot where Jesus was tempted by the devil to turn from his own Father, God Almighty. As told in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it was from this peak of the mountain that Satan tempted Jesus with ultimate power. Satan gave Jesus the option to rule over all the kingdoms of the world. After Jesus was given this temptation, he spent 40 days and 40 nights fasting in a cave. The mystical Monastery of the Temptation is supposedly built above that very cave. The two main churches were built by the Crusaders about 1,000 years ago. They constructed one within a cave about halfway up the cliff face. But then, almost 900 years later, in 1874, the land was purchased by the Orthodox Church. They were the ones who made the more modern monastery around the original cave chapel, the one marking the stone where Jesus sat totally still for 40 days. Mispat Al Alabbrin. The mysterious mud village of Mispat Al Alabbrin in Oman is a mysterious and mystical place. It's positioned within the Hajar Mountains, somewhere that even today feels kind of prehistoric. There are very few people living in the region. The valleys are filled with palm trees, and red cliffs and rocky plateaus fill the skyline. It's here, in the shadow of the Jebel Shams and beyond the winding valley known as Oman's Grand Canyon, that an abandoned community hides in the dark rocks and deep crags. Mispat Al Alabbrin was built about 300 years ago as an oasis town. Its first inhabitants were members of the Omani Al-Abri tribe. They built their grand city against the face of a cliff, turning a relatively barren landscape into a Babylonian utopia. The tribespeople were smart enough to direct water from the oasis through their city using a complex irrigation system. The system involved building stone canals through the mountain, creating a lush paradise in an otherwise dead and ugly desert. They had beautiful blue pools outside their mud houses, terraces lush with desert vegetation and chirping birds. The whole village was full of mango trees, banana trees, pomegranates, papayas, oranges, and dates. Mispat Al Alabbrin was something straight out of an Arabian fairy tale. Sadly, it was abandoned recently in favor of more modern houses closer to the big city. Today, the oasis village is little more than a remote tourist attraction. Sigiri. Sigiri is an ancient city in Sri Lanka built on the top of a huge rock column. Also known as Lion Rock, the city stands 590 feet above the ground and has been there for over 1,500 years. It was King Kashyapa who chose the top of the rock as the location for his mighty palace fortress during his rule between 477 and 495 AD. It was a jungle sanctuary so high above the forest that the king believed it impossible to conquer. Unfortunately for King Kashyapa, his city in the sky wasn't that difficult to take. His half-brother, Moggallana, showed up with an army from India intent on retaking the throne, which his brother had stolen after murdering their father. In 495, Kashyapa's army abandoned him in the middle of the battle, and he fell on his own sword and died. The city of Sigiri was then abandoned. The capital was moved to Anuradhapura, and Sigiri was converted into a Buddhist monastery. The monastery survived another 1,000 years before it vanished from the history books and was forgotten. It wasn't until Jonathan Forbes of the British Army rediscovered the place in 1831 that Sigiri was brought back into public view. It must have been an amazing thing to uncover for Jonathan and his team. The only way to reach the city is by scaling the side of the mountain and then passing through a mighty gateway built in the shape of a lion. The lion gate alone was like something out of a fairy tale, a huge stone beast whose legs you must pass under to reach the city above. Sadly, only one of its paws is left today. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Hellcat Jeep, Liz Fernier, and Vikram Achaira. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join the family. We'd love to have you. Balan Sacred Cave. Balan is a sacred Maya cave located near the jungle city of Chichen Itza. It was first discovered in 1905 by curious explorers who hacked their way through the ferocious vegetation just to reach its entrance.
It wasn't until 1959, though, that archaeologists uncovered a series of hidden passages within the subterranean sanctuary. That was when they realized just how important this particular cave was to the Maya. The cave and its passages were dedicated to Chak, the god of rain. He was one of the most important deities in Maya mythology, recognized as the bringer of life. Chak was so important that the Maya used the cave for centuries as a place to offer him sacrifices. Balan is currently one of the most important underground archaeological sites in the world. The cave goes on for over 1.2 miles and descends 32 feet into an underground nightmare. This is a place straight out of a dark Mesoamerican fairy tale, somewhere the Maya really did associate with the underworld and life beyond death. This cave and others like it were often seen as entrances into the realm of the dead, much like Hades in Greek mythology. Monsanmichel. Monsanmichel in France is without a doubt the most fairy tale-esque place in existence today. It's the most visited destination in France besides Paris, and to be honest, it's not hard to see why. Monsanmichel is a medieval abbey built on an island, constructed atop a pyramid of granite and lording over a small village of medieval abodes along the island's shores. There's just nothing quite like it anywhere else on the planet. Monsanmichel covers a small area of only about 7 hectares. Construction on the island began in 708 AD, when a sanctuary was established dedicated to the Archangel Saint Michel. A larger chapel was built in the 10th century AD. About 300 years later, construction began on the Benedictine Abbey, which still stands. There were several modifications and restorations done up until the 19th century, but what you see today is mostly original. The fortifications around the island, which have turned it into a veritable fortress, were built in the 14th century to protect the abbey and its medieval village from the English. Hiji Castle. Hiji Castle in Japan is the Japanese equivalent of Bavaria's Neuschwanstein Castle, or aka the inspiration for the famous Disney Castle. It was built on a hilltop from between 1581 and 1609, and it's still standing strong today. Its main tower in the center is 6 stories tall, with sweeping tiled rooftops where you can imagine ninjas running barefoot in the night. The complex is wholly impressive, with a double moat, tall defensive walls to keep those pesky ninjas out, and the whole structure painted eloquently in shades of white and gray. It was the famous military leader Toyotomi Hideyoshi who was behind the original construction of Hiji Castle. He ruled Japan between 1537 and 1598 and was one of the most important leaders in Japanese history. He helped unify the nation in the 16th century, reorganizing the class system, creating tax reforms, restoring old temples, invading Korea, and building fairy tale castles across Japan. His reforms would last in Japan until the modern age. One of the coolest parts about the castle is its defensive strategy. The interior is made up of 83 buildings surrounding the central castle keep. These buildings were designed in the fashion of a labyrinth to mislead potential invaders. The purpose here was that if the castle was breached, those invading would get so confused by the maze that they'd never make it to the central keep. Then, as the invaders tried to blunder their way through the dizzying mess of buildings and hallways, counterattacks could be launched by soldiers who knew exactly how to navigate the labyrinth. Roman Watchtower. In Morocco, archaeologists revealed an old Roman watchtower near the mysterious ancient city of Volubilis. When the watchtower was originally built, it was positioned along the southern border of the Roman province of Mauretania Tingitana. The site was occupied by the Roman army at the very outskirts of their empire. Researchers believe the Romans controlled the area between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. And while there isn't anything left except the Watcher's stone foundations, this was once a truly spectacular site. 2,000 years ago, the Watchtower was an impressive fortification standing at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the sprawling lands below. It was likely used by the army to control the flow of people and goods through their border. It wasn't a marvelous castle or an old fairy tale village, but it was a faraway outpost at the fringe of Roman territory. The tower was built near the edge of the desert in a place that would have shared very little culturally with the Romans. To cross the border here would have been to stray into unknown lands far beyond the reach of Roman control. To be stationed here as a soldier born in Rome would have been like living at a military garrison at the end of the world. Bodium Castle. Bodium Castle is something straight out of legend. It looks like the exact place King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table would hold court, with Merlin doing magic up on the castle ramparts. It was built between 1380 and 1385 by a local noble named Sir Edward Dalingridge. This was an extremely rough time for the people of Britain. The Black Death arrived in the UK in 1348, leading to mass starvation, unprecedented death, and social anarchy. Then, during the second part of the 14th century, England went to war with France. It was not a good time to be a peasant, but a surprisingly fortunate time to be a noble. Sir Edward became wealthy through the war. He was promoted to Warden of London in 1392 by King Richard II, and he landed himself in the highest circle of English society. His castle is evidence of his prestige. It's one of the only castles in England still standing in almost perfect condition. It's located in East Sussex, open all year for tourists to walk around the tea room, the castle courtyard, and to explore the huge moat which surrounds the building. Access to the castle is only available by crossing a bridge to the original stone plinth. The moat is enormous, making any effort of siege seem fruitless. Attackers would have needed boats just to breach the castle walls. Ancient Tavern. Archaeologists working in southern France recently discovered what appears to be a 2,100-year-old tavern, an old drinking hall straight out of a fantasy book. It comes from the 1st century BC and could be the earliest of its kind in the Western Mediterranean. This mysterious tavern was found near the ancient town of Latara and would have been in business during the Roman conquest of the area. The people of Latara were originally farmers before the Romans showed up. Then, when the Romans had secured the area, suddenly there were new jobs, and one of those jobs was a barkeep. When researchers first came upon this site, they thought they had found a really old bakery. Excavations lasted for over 5 years, uncovering ovens, indoor gristmills, and all the equipment necessary for baking flatbread. But it was the charcoal hearth, earthen benches, and scraps of fish bones on the kitchen floor that revealed the site was a true tavern. Just like you see in fantasy movies, locals gathered here to share drinks, sing songs, and eat all kinds of steaming fish soups. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite ancient site? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos about amazing places. See you later. Bye!